Hey, what's up again, my friends? It's Carpo here. Yep, that's right. I made it about 2 days, and here I am making a video again. Hey, I couldn't resist. Actually, I just said that because I said I was taking a week off or so of making videos. I figured I'd probably end up making one, but my main focus was just to do some other things I wanted to get done. And while I was working out here on the back porch for the last couple days, I've been doing some thinking about various subjects, and as I always do, as you can see, I've got out behind me on this side, I've got my chop saw, and then over here I've got my garden. And I got my garden going last week, and then I just finished putting a new roof on this whole porch, and so it's like a corrugated clear roof now. Repainted it and put everything back up, and kind of doing the guy's guy stuff, the man's man stuff. And I was a carpenter for a long time, so I've got a lot of tools and I know how to use them. And I definitely don't have any issue with what it means to be a man, and I don't really give it much thought, to be honest. And that's why I'm making this video, not for the sake of joining in any controversy about what being a man is today, but rather because of the amount of young men that I've talked to personally who have asked me for either advice or mentioned that they're confused about what it means to be a man in today's world, as well as the amount of people that I've seen attracted to certain speakers and ideas trying to get a grip on what it really means to be a man in today's world. And for some reason, a lot of people are offended by that idea, even discussing it. But what does it mean to grow up to be a man? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. My father passed away when I was 15, but he was a really good man. He fought in Vietnam. I know that he was a little bit quiet because of it, but he was an outdoorsman. He loved to go out hiking, fishing, canoeing. And I'll never forget, he taught me how to fish, he taught me how to canoe. We went camping and enjoyed the quiet out in the desert. And I remember one time we went with the family, and we were cruising around, walking up and down this old dirt road in the middle of desert road in the middle of nowhere. We were looking for a rabbit, and we said, well, he said, if you want to shoot a rabbit, I can show you how to gut it and we can cook it. So we went down the road, and sure enough, a rabbit comes hopping out in the middle of the road and just sits there and looks at us. And I had a .22, and I aimed it, had him dead center, and I was a pretty good shot at that age, so I knew I'd hit him. And I always enjoyed shooting rifles. And within 2 seconds of looking through that barrel, looking down the sights, I was like, all right, I can't do it. I can't kill him. It's just not my thing. And my dad, without even a second thought, he's just like, that's not your thing. That's cool. And guess what? It wasn't his thing either. And you know what? My dad was probably dreading cleaning that rabbit. But he did it because that's what fathers do. They try to train their boys to be men. Now, since I was a kid, things have changed. At least the idea of what being a man has been somewhat diminished. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. What I am going to do is say, I'm going to try to give it a perspective from a guy's perspective anyway. For those out there who are dismissing the man's man types. And this is coming from a guy who's not a man's man type. I'm very sensitive, I have empathy, but I'm tough. I don't put up with bullshit. I have a heart, but I also have a fist if I have to use it. And I'm pretty fair about these things. I'm honest about how I feel, and I think that that's what, So, there always have to be sirens in the background because there's always somebody dying. It's inconvenient that people have to get fucked up, but it'll pass. Being a man used to mean, first off, I want to talk about how much being a man is influenced by the cinema and the media. We have been inundated with this bullshit 007 kind of standard. I would call it the 00 standard, the idea that no man can really look like that. It's this dream, this Superman-esque type Clark Kent attitude that every guy wishes that he had this, ability to become this great man. And it's not about what he does so much as the looks and the strength, the physical strength, because that's something that we've carried over time from history. So what I'm going to say here is that the characteristics that our ancestors probably celebrated in a men were things like toughness, strength, being prepared, smartness. And I'm not talking about just intellect, but smartness, being able to be witty and to be able to provide for your family and your tribe. Now, over time this changed, and up and through the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, let's say, manners all of a sudden became this thing that men, you have to have manners. Being wealthy was considered a trait, and still is today, of great man. He's earned his way, but what wealth really represents is provider to the extreme, if you will. And so we fail to see that it's not the money really, it's just the ability to provide. But we were also looked for, through those centuries, the manners and prestige and intellect and dress. And all these things were, I don't know, they seem to pale in comparison to, I should say the absurdity of them pales in comparison to some of the things that we consider to be manly today, or rather not manly, but let's just say we were on the right track, and we still are, I think. When I was a kid, and up until, recent years, and still today, the modern idea of a man, in a lot of guys' eyes, is being a good father. That wasn't something that was ever a big deal in the past. You could be a great man and not give a shit about your kids, beat them if they weren't listening. It wasn't a big issue to how you treated your kids in a lot of people's eyes. They thought, well, spare the rod, spoil the child kind of attitude. And it takes patience to be a good parent and to be patient with your children. So being a good father also means listening and raising your children to respect, not through fear, but through understanding. Another modern trait is being patient, being honest, being fair and prudent in your decisions, being kind and understanding. These aren't things that were manly traits in the past. And they are considered to be things that we should all aspire to in today's society. And I'm just giving a general kind of outline of these. When this becomes extreme is when we get into the snowflake, where basically a man not just says, well, a man should be sensitive, but says, well, all men who try to be manly men or think that muscles make you a man, they're just idiots, or they're weak-minded, or they're not, they don't know what being a man really is, and kind of changing it from being a good man to being these identity politics. Well, I'm more sensitive than other people. Oh, I don't have any judgment. I don't offend other people. I'm completely against war. I'm completely against violence. I'm a vegan, for God's sake. Fucking get so sick of hearing that shit. If you're a vegan, fucking good for you, but you don't have to tell everybody about it. Self-depreciation, and sometimes, and this is what it's led to, is the idiot man syndrome, which is why a lot of people say got pissed at that stupid Gillette commercial a while back. It's not just the commercials. It's TV shows, like, think about Al Bundy from Married with Children, and that kind of, slob guy, image. And this, at the same time, there was a lot of girl power in the media. Females had started rising up, if you will, the feminism movement and, women's lib. It was like women were finally gaining just equality, but it's almost like it was okay to go into this kind of girl power realm, but boys were supposed to tone it down. And this is where it gets really touchy with people, because a lot of women believe that it's this patriarchy and that men are the problem. I've even heard men say this, yeah, we're the problem, men are the problem. You know what? Stop saying this. Men are not the problem. People are the fucking problem. It's people in general. And I know men cause a lot of the problems in the world, sure, but let's not get into that. Let's just say that by saying men are the problem, all we're doing is making the problems worse, because men have had a lot of obligations in this world through history. And that's why I'm talking about the genetics and the reason why men tend to be, let's just say, have this desire to maybe one-up other guys, or the alpha male complex. It's not about being better than other people, it's about having self-esteem, and that comes through knowing your place in the pack. And I know a lot of people don't believe in a hierarchy with humans, or believe that there is such a thing as an alpha male. But I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but Men look at other men a certain way, and women look at men a certain way, and you can't change that just by, writing new laws into books and saying, oh, well, this is, this is what we've decided in society a man is. Women still like a strong man, a man that can stand up for himself and provide. I'm sorry, girls don't like wimpy dudes, and some do, but a majority of women likes a man who can stand up for himself and does. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not something we should try to avoid. But it shows us that we're so sensitive about the differences between men and women now that we won't even talk about it. But I'm going to stick to the main point here. The idea is that what is cool varies by culture. So being a man varies by culture. And I was comparing this to animals. The idea that some birds dance, some fish and animals make these beautiful nests. As I said this the other day, some create art and design. But humans, we don't quite know what we do to mate, if you will. We're like, what is being a man? How do you attract a mate? And we're confused already as is, but it's even become more complex for a lot of the kids growing up today. We do not have something that a lot of our ancestors had, which was a rites of passage. And that was a major thing for a lot of men and women as they came of age. But today we're confused about culture, and we're seeking community and stability. The reason we're confused is because we're not living in small communities where we can isolate ourselves anymore. We have the internet, and the world is getting bigger. I should say getting smaller. People are moving to new locations. There's a lot more blending of societies, and therefore it confuses a lot of people because others have different cultural needs and different interests. And being a man in one culture could be how you dress, in another it's how strong you are. Or we might look at somebody and say, why are you fighting other people? Even me, I don't understand fighting martial arts, all these, mixed martial arts, or boxing. But I do understand it. I think it's messed up. I would never want to partake in that, or anybody I know partake, but I understand it from that primal urge. Then there's the, others who, and this is kind of where we're at, we mistakenly think that certain things are cool. And this is only cool within our small community or culture. These are things like kids with the little fart cans on their cars going mee around the town, thinking that everybody thinks they're cool because they're looking, but really they just think they're idiots. It's even worse with the big truck syndrome, big loud trucks. And this little 5-foot tall guy jumps out. And it's like, I've seen it over and over. It's unfortunate that the stereotypes tend to ring true, but there's an overcompensation for small penises and small heights. And this isn't men's fault. It's because we've been brought up to think you have to be 6 foot tall and, buff. And it's just not the reality of most men. We have to own up to who we are and just live with it, instead of trying to express ourselves through our stuff and look at how cool I am because of what I bought or what I have. Harley riders are the worst. There's no excuse for riding your Harley down the street at 1 a.m, blaring your pipes through a neighborhood. And I'm not saying motorcycle riders are all disrespectful, because a lot are very respectful and they will agree with what I'm saying. But there's this old saying with motorcycle riders, loud pipes save lives. The idea is that these aftermarket loud mufflers save lives because people can hear you coming. There's absolutely no evidence to show that loud pipes save lives. They point the sound out the back anyway, so anybody in front of you is not going to really hear you coming. And it's just one of those misconceptions that's thrown around. It's an excuse for somebody to say, I want to be cool, but I don't want to admit that I want to be cool. And that's an interesting thing with guys, It's funny because, for like with the bike thing, people will say, well, it's a safety issues, it saves lives. And they said, when people say that, I think it's in Wisconsin or somewhere out there, that they said that of all these riders who say that they have loud pipes to be safe, 75% of them don't even wear a helmet when they're riding their motorcycle. So there's an illusion. We're afraid to admit that we're trying to be cool. And in this culture today, it seems like that's what we're pushing for, is to not, I guess, to make guys feel guilty about being guys, if that makes sense. And I sit kind of in the middle. I'm on the fence on the issue. I'm not, I don't believe in being a tough guy, and I laugh at the tough guys, but I also I laugh at the guys who don't know how to do anything. You know, don't even know how to hammer a 2x4 or get out of here, bee. There's a huge yellow jacket flying around here, and those guys just drive me nuts. See, I'm not a man. I'm scared of bees. So away from the tough guy syndrome, even in areas where you would, like, let's think of a different type of man, the Buddhists. You know, think of a calm, collected group of Buddhists who are, you know, that's what being a man is to them, is being peaceful, being accepting. Do you know what's going on in Myanmar right now? The Buddhists, in their ribs, have been slaughtering thousands of Rohingya Muslims that have come to Myanmar, have been there for a long time. It's a very complex issue, but the point is that there are Buddhist leaders who are saying we have to kill these people because they're an infection and a disease upon our people. It shows that no matter how peaceful a person may be, or how, I don't know, get out of here, bee. Kick your butt. Alright, that's it. I'm going to have to whip him. If he doesn't go away, I'm going to have to whip him. I really don't like giant yellow jackets. Alright. He's gonna go away now that I got a weapon. Sorry about that. God, that's annoying. I don't want to deal with editing or cutting it out. I also don't want that giant guy landing on me and stinging me. I've run into their nests before and they're just a nuisance. Yeah, yellow jackets suck, but they're necessary. So, yeah, the Buddhists are slaughtering Muslims. Anyway, we'll move on past that. The idea is for being a man, do you stand up or stand down? And that's a big one. When it comes to somebody getting in your face, for example, do you stand up to them and speak your mind, or do you stand down? And it depends on the circumstance and the situation, and I think that's where a lot of guys don't know where to draw the line. Guy says, hey, if you get in my face, man, I'm going to kick your ass. It's like, dude, you're not tough because of that. You're weak. You're an idiot. But if somebody's, harassing your family, that's a completely different story. You need to stand up for the others, those that can't protect themselves. Basically, I think a good trait is to be able to talk your way out of an argument and talk your way out of a fight instead of trying to instigate it and make it worse. One of the questions is, who are the heroes and who are your heroes? And not only that, but we ask ourselves why and what have they done to earn that status with us? I had a hard time picking out some of my heroes. I'll try to go over a few later, but I don't really have any heroes. I just have people I respect and admire. But one of the interesting things, like I said, men have no rite of passage, and that makes it really hard. And history says that we need it, and most cultures have had some sort of a rite of passage. So, since we don't have that, we look to men with answers, or that we think have answers, or philosophers in the past. But one of the most interesting concepts to me is how many young men flock to guys like Jordan Peterson, for example, which people either love or hate. And I'm in the middle. I think he's boring and dry for the most part, but he's got a few points that a lot of guys grasp onto. I'm more interested in what is it that men find empowering about listening to certain speakers. And for me, I'm kind of a stubborn guy. I don't have a lot of heroes, and I'm like, show me what you got kind of thing. In other words, if somebody tries to be too serious and they can't even laugh, then I'm just like, man, I get bored with it really easy. I mean, maybe that's what it is, laughter. But what about Joseph Campbell? The mythology of the hero and the hero's journey. How many guys know who Joseph Campbell was? I know a lot of you do. And that's the thing. These are the guys who were able to have fun with learning, fun with knowledge, and apply it to life. Apply it to where we could all benefit from it. And really yearn to share that with people. But they were the quiet ones, the unseen, the unspoken ones. And that are heard later. The heroes always come out of the woodwork later. Being stoic, intelligent, aware, and prepared in life. Those are just really important things, important traits for guys to have, I think. And one of the keys, I think, is to find the way that works best for you. Don't be too influenced by other people, but those who think they take their own way, there is no own way. We all follow some sort of a pattern that works for someone else, or that we've observed working for others, even if we're not aware of it. psychological roots of why we do the things we do. You know, even though it's all wired in neurotransmitters, the same ones that a fly has or any other animal. There's nothing exclusive about us. The only thing that's different about us is that we can think in metaphors. We can see things on a multi-layered level, and that makes it even more complicated to know what's right. In other words, we feel in our hearts the way we want to do something, but then we question it because society's telling us it's not right. It's a very difficult line to walk for all of us, I'm sure. And then there's the, of course, the idea that one side's always right and one side's wrong when it comes to, say, men, groups of men. The liberal conservative ideology, both are right and both are wrong. It's not about it. We need varied skills, varied types of men and women in this world in order to operate. It's just the way it's always been. But there are some universal traits that, even though there's lots of different men and different types of men in different cultures, some of the universal traits that cross all boundaries, and those are, you always protect your family. Always. You want to have meaningful work. That's always important to people. And by that I mean work that you feel is fulfilling to you. Not just working hard. Not working harder, working smarter. Respect for others and yourself, awareness of the world around you, and preparedness for anything that might come your way. Honesty and values vary, but we still have to have a set of values, some sort of values. And I think those are the only real traits a man needs, if you will. But you could apply those to women too, men or women. So nobody has a monopoly on what's the right way to live. You just check your company, check your community, and look around and say, are the people that are like me, do I like these people? Do I like the company of the people I'm around? In other ways, if we have a certain set of values and we hang out with people with those values, and we find that all the people we hang out with are shitty, then maybe it's time to look for new friends. And it may be the value system that's the problem. And that's hard. I've had some shitty friends too, and I've had some great friends, and I really don't. I don't even know what values a lot of people have. In other words, people keep a lot of these things to themselves. There's one version of manhood. Hard work basically is important to people. If we're not working, it drives us nuts. It doesn't matter what we're doing, as long as we're doing something, whether we're interacting with people or getting something done. But like I said, if it's not enjoyed, then it can drive us insane. And in today's world, it's easy to get kind of lost in the world of work. But sometimes we realize that it's not that we need to work harder. It's that we need to be smarter. We spend money hoping to buy happiness. We think that wealth is going to help us overcome our grievances. Money will not buy you manhood. It doesn't matter how big the spoiler is on your sports car. It really doesn't matter how much iron you pump. Sorry, bodybuilders are gross to me, but I'm not talking about guys who work out, but dudes who are just, all about the muscle. I don't get it, but I respect that. If that's their version of being a man, then so be it. And that's why I'm trying to cover some of those bases. To say it's okay for me to not respect other people's life choices, but still respect the people. A good example would be Joe Rogan. He's a fighter. I don't understand why people fight. Like I said, I think it's stupid, but that's because I know that it does brain damage long term, and he realizes that too, of course. But the thing is, he's very smart. He's open-minded. And he's over the years grown a lot after listening to his show. It's guys like that who are just the average Joes, no pun intended, but that it's not about the person or what they do with their private time, but rather the emphasis that they put on truth and understanding the world. By being a man and realizing you can be one kind of a man and still be open and have an open heart. You don't have to be the tough guy all the time. He's definitely not the tough guy, and that's what I like about him, I guess. But being stoic, being honest with yourself, and being honest with how you feel about life, those are things that we can't overlook. They're important. A few people I was going to list, there's guys, I don't want to list the heroes. I was thinking of George Carlin, even Walter Cronkite, but there's the main rule that I learned is never meet your heroes. And so far I haven't met any, so that's all right. It just means that everybody's flawed inside, and everybody's got their own shortcomings. So I sure as hell do, and I'm more than willing to admit that. And as long as we can admit those things, then we're growing. On a final note, being a father, because part of being a man is being a father for a lot of guys. Not all guys, and I'm not saying that you can't be a man and not be a father too. That would be absurd. Maybe for a lot of men it's better off that they don't, because some jobs, some life paths require that solitude, and marriage and kids aren't for everyone. But for those who do, if you're going to make the decision to have a child in this world, these are just a few of the keys that I wanted to share that I think are important. First off, bond with the child. That's obvious. But in the past, a lot of dads just didn't bond with their kids and even hold the kids. And in fact, a lot of mothers never even hold their kids. The nanny does it. And to me, that's the saddest thing, because a child really needs that in their lives. And I'm not saying that a child needs a man and a woman in their life. I'm not going to get into the whole sexism bullshit. I'm just saying, if there's a father and a mother present in the child's life and living together, they should give him equal attention to the extent where at least they can hold him once in a while. But try to bond with that child when they're young, because they need you, obviously. The next one is teach them to question authority. And I'll tell you, this is something a lot of parents don't teach their children. And the reason why is obvious. If you teach your kid to question authority, they're going to question you. And you should inspire that. Doesn't mean that you have to put up with their bullcrap when they question you, but if they're going to question you, then at least you will be able to look inside and see whether or not your justifications are valid. And I think that's important for all of us, instead of the do what I say, not as I do type attitude, or because I said so. You know, I like to explain things as well as I can. But at a point, you just got to say, shut up. Allow your kids to play and dream. So many parents try to put their kids down. I've heard parents say the worst things, you know, to their kids, like, well, you'll never do that or never be that, you know, kind of laying on their own life problems onto their kids, you know, and not inspiring them. So inspire them. Inspire them to play and dream, even if they don't get where they think they want to be when they're 2. At least try to help them find, you know, or at least help to support what they do. Because kids are all going to be different. And the worst thing you can do to a kid is say, why can't you be like your brother or your sister? Or why can't you be like this? That's one of the worst things you can ever say to your kids. Don't live vicariously through your kids. That's pretty absurd when parents do that, but a lot of parents do. You're going to play football. I don't want to play football. You're going to play football. You're going to be a tough guy. You're going to be a man because I never made it, and I hurt my calf my junior year, and damn it, I would have gone pro. And, you know, the dad who just wants his kid to play some sport because he did, or because he never got to, or because he thinks it'll make him a man out of him. You know, these things are absurd. Total bullshit. The next one is don't punish your kids out of frustration. If you have to punish your children, punish them, but don't punish them just because you're mad about something else. Too many angry parents come home from work and take shit out on their family, and you know, that makes you so much less of a man when you hurt people. When you physically abuse your wife or your children, to me that makes you one of the smallest types of men. So, not even a man. You know, it'd be a child in my eyes. In other words, men who hit women and children are children themselves that never grew up, and there's no excuse for it. Next one is listen to your children, especially as they get older. They're going to have some things to say, and they're going to want to tell you about their lives and what they're thinking, and that's important to listen. Be patient but firm. It's so hard to be patient with kids. But you have to be firm when, you know, they're not listening, they're not obeying. It's one of the hardest things, especially when you have more than one kid. Honesty and not sheltering your kids is something that I think Americans are finally starting to realize. The idea that your kids are going to hear the word porn, your kids are going to hear the word murder, they're going to see knives, they're going to see guns, they're going to hear about war. All these things are disgusting. It's funny that we hide sex from our kids more than we hide war and blood and death. Think about that for a minute. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of parents are like, oh, well, you want to watch a cartoon about violence and about how there's this, you know, war, because that's just real world. But if it has anything to do with sex, we won't even talk about it. And I get it. it's uncomfortable for people, but you got to grow up, and the more we grow up, the more we can help our kids grow up too. Um, Teach and learn together. Don't think you always know more than your kids. That's obvious and self-explanatory. We usually do know more about a lot of subjects, but sometimes we don't, and our kids can teach us some things too. Never use your kids as chess pieces to get even with your ex or something, whether you got divorced or had a girlfriend, boyfriend. There are people who use their kids as pawns in a game of chess, playing around with other people's hearts and minds, and that is one of the most appalling things to me. That's like the physical abuse I said. Just the smallest types of people, women do this a lot. So let me just say that a lot more women, I've heard a lot more reports of women doing this because women tend to get the children, and this is why men get very upset about this, and it starts this whole dialogue about fairness and men's rights and all this, and I will not get into that right now because that's just too controversial. The last two things: accept who your kids want to be, and the final one is teach them metaphors. That may seem a little strange of a thing to add as a final note. Teach your children how to think in metaphors. Teach them how to see the world in symbols. When you see something happening, compare it to another event, or the blooming of a flower as like the growth of a human. This may seem very small, but it's huge. Because I'm going to tell you something. This is the one thing that sets us apart from other creatures. Not empathy or creativity or awareness, consciousness, but this ability to see things in symbols and metaphors. That is a very important tool. And I can't explain why until... If you're a person out there who knows what I'm talking about and you think in metaphors, perhaps you could explain it in the comments better than I can, without sounding too floaty or spiritual. But it's a state of mind where you become more accepting of things because you can see the reflections of their nature in other things. And there is a quote from the biblical text of "as above, so below," which kind of represents this idea. And what that means, as the macro to the micro, it's like the fractal nature of things. The fact that you look at the top of a lightning bolt, each branch is smaller and smaller, but they all look like the whole. Same thing with blood vessels, trees, all these different, the neurons in the brain, right? That's what the fractal is. And so anyhow, I better just end this now. It's gotten quite long. To all the men out there, hopefully I covered this as well as I could. If you have anything to add, please do. I would love to hear your opinions. I don't think anything I said in here should offend anyone, because it's just a matter of saying, if you want to be a snowflake man, then so be it. If you want to be a man's man tough guy, then so be it. I don't believe that having a gun or learning to beat people up makes you any tougher or better. I don't think that hunting or being all American or driving a big truck or waving an American flag, or a rebel flag for that matter, makes you any tougher. In fact, from my viewpoint, the real men can be content with who they are without having to make more of it or use the group to define who they are, in other words. Real men are self-made, if that makes sense, but still understand the value of having a group of people they can talk to. So I just put that in there to make sure I'm not saying that, every man needs to be an island. In fact, I took some notes for a video the other day, and I just found them today. I was going to, for a future video, and it was like, I take voice notes on this little voice memo thing whenever I think of stuff on my phone, and one of the lines on there said, "No man is an island," and then like 2 lines down it said, "Every man is an island." And I was like, God, that's the contradiction of life. I can't even, I come up with contradicting ideas within a day of each other, and don't even realize, but both are true. It's all true. We have to be our own man. And it's okay to be a man. And it's okay to talk about being a man. And it's okay to be a smart man. It's okay to be a strong man. And don't let the media make you think that everybody is scared of being a man. The real world isn't operating like the media portrays it. Men are still men. Women are still women. Most people get this and understand that it's not a big controversy, or men versus women. But as long as there's division out there, then it keeps the eyes off of the real enemies out there who are stripping us of our wealth and making it harder for us to even take care of our kids because we have to work longer hours, and daycare is too expensive, and then we have to decide whether to buy our pharmaceuticals or pay our bills. Yeah, it's a wonderful world we live in. Why did I have to go there, right? Anyway, be a good man or a good woman, and whatever that may mean to you, without dismissing the other men and women. And I'm talking to you, all the snowflakes who are making fun of the tough guys, and you, all the tough guys who are making fun of the snowflakes. And I'm sorry to call out the Harley riders and big truck guys. I don't mean anything by it, but when you are invading other people's personal space with your noise to try to be cool, that is much different than walking down the street with a leather jacket and looking cool. I want people to understand why I brought that up, because Harley riders are idiots when they have loud pipes. If you put on aftermarket pipes just to be louder and you think that that's, a cool thing, then what you're doing is waking up thousands of people at night for no reason other than your own glory. And I've heard this story from so many people, and I had a neighbor across the way. He drove a muscle car, but it was obviously set up to be loud. And he started at 5 in the morning and rev it up for like 10 full minutes to try to get it started, and then take off down the street. Everybody in the neighborhood woke up. It's a block away, And so, tough guys don't need to interfere with other people's personal space. And you can close your eyes to somebody who looks like an idiot, but you can't close your ears. I wanted to make that a point, because noise pollution is a huge thing. That goes for the kids bumping their bass down the street and the little tin can fart cans on your cars, too. So, being silent and stoic is a little bit more appealing. That's my opinion. What do I know? I'm just a man. I'll talk to y'all later. Be well, my friends, and I'll talk to you when I talk to you.